Bible John. Was this the killer in Glaswegian nightlife? In the late 1960s, Glasgow's vibrant nightlife was shattered by a series of gruesome murders that would come to be known as the case of Bible John, a elusive figure. He struck fear into the hearts of Glasgow residents. His crimes, characterized by brutality and a chilling sense of ritual, remain one of Scotland's most infamous unsolved serial killer mysteries. However, new evidence has emerged which appears to shine light on who he actually was. The victims of Bible John were all dark-haired between the ages of 25 and 31, all of whom met their murderer at the Barrowland Ballroom, a popular dance hall and music venue in the city known to locals as the Barrows. The perpetrator has eluded capture and the case remains officially unsolved and one of the most extensive manhunts in Scottish criminal history. This unidentified serial killer became known as Bible John due to his repetitive quotes from the Bible. In particular, he condemned adultery while in the company of his final victim. The victims and their backgrounds: Patricia Docker. On the 23rd of February 1968, the naked body of a 25-year-old estranged mother of one, an auxiliary nurse, Patricia Docker, was discovered in the doorway of a lock-up garage in the alleyway behind 27 Carmichael Place in the Battlefield district. The location of her body was a few streets away from her home in Langside Place. Her body bore evidence of extensive blunt force trauma, particularly to the face and head. She had been strangled to death with a strong ligature, possibly a belt. A post-mortem confirmed that the cause of death had been strangulation, and that Docker's body bore no clear evidence of sexual assault. Jemima MacDonald. On Saturday, the 16th of August 1969, a 31-year-old mother of three named Jemima MacDonald also opted to spend the evening dancing at the Barrowland Ballroom. MacDonald was a regular attendee of the Barrowland and, according to family custom, her sister, Margaret O'Brien, took care of her three children in her absence. As midnight approached, she was seen by several people in the company of a young, well-dressed and well-spoken man of slim build, aged between 25 and 35 and between 6 feet and 6 feet 2 inches in height. She was found the following day by her sister in an abandoned tenement. A post-mortem revealed that MacDonald had been extensively beaten, particularly about the face, before she had been strangled to death, possibly with her own stockings. Helen Puttock. On the 31st of October 1969, a man walking his dog discovered the body of 29-year-old Helen Puttock behind a tenement in the Scotsdown district. Her body was found beside a drainpipe in the back garden of her Earl Street flat. She had been stripped partially naked, extensively beaten about the face before then strangled to death with one of her own stockings. The contents of her handbag had been scattered close to her body. The handbag itself was missing from the crime scene. Grass and weed stains upon the soles of Puttock's feet and shoes indicated that she had engaged in a ferocious struggle with her killer. In-depth profile of Bible John. Witnesses and investigators believed Bible John was a white male, approximately 30 to 40 years old at the time of his crimes, and around 6 descriptions varied, but many described him as well-dressed, well-spoken with a slim build. His hair was short and ginger, a common color among Scots. Behavioral traits and MO. Bible John's approach was chillingly calculated. He often targeted women leaving nightclubs late at night, claiming to be offering assistance or simply approaching them in a seemingly friendly manner. Once he engaged their attention, he would lure or ambush them, often strangling them with his hands or ligature, and then brutally assaulting their bodies. His murders exhibited a disturbing ritualistic element, sometimes leaving personal items or rearranging victims' clothing, suggesting a psychological fixation or compulsion. He was known to have approached victims with a calm, confident demeanor, which contrasted sharply with the violence he inflicted. Psychological profile and behavior patterns. Experts believe Bible John was a deeply disturbed individual, possibly with a background in violence or mental illness. His apparent obsession with control and domination, coupled with his ritualistic behavior, suggests he might have been a narcissist or a person with a compulsive disorder. His ability to evade capture for years indicates he was intelligent, cautious, and possibly had a meticulous plan for avoiding detection. The fact that he targeted women in nightlife venues, which provided anonymity and opportunities for quick attacks, underscores his cunning. The initial investigation. Law enforcement agencies launched an investigation with 100 full-time detectives, interviewing thousands of witnesses with 5,000 potential suspects, examining thousands of tip-offs, and analyzing the crime scenes. In June 1970, police employed the PhotoFit system in an attempt to produce a better likeness of the suspect. This was the first instance this method of identifying a murder suspect was used in Scotland. Despite this, Bible John remained anonymous, and the case went cold. Prime suspects John Edgar John White, Les Brown, who worked on the Bible John case as a junior detective, had always suspected an individual whom he first became aware of after an altercation in the Barrowland. His appearance closely matched that which the police had. This individual gave a false name of John White when first approached by the police. However, this was later revealed to be John Edgar. After extensive and prolonged investigation into Edgar, Brown wrote of his suspicions in his 2005 autobiography. The man came forward and offered to provide a DNA sample in order to clear his name. This led to his elimination as a suspect. The author Paul Harrison has also criticized the theory, pointing to how Brown contradicted himself by voicing his opinions that Peter Tobin may have been responsible. David Henderson. In 1983, a Lanarkshire contractor contacted Strathclyde police. He claimed to conclusively know that his friend David Henderson had been Bible John, adding that both he and Henderson had been raised in the Cranhill district of Glasgow and both had frequented the Barrowland Ballroom in the 1960s. Willie had, he claimed, read an article in a local newspaper 5 years previously before suddenly realizing his friend had been the perpetrator of the murders. The alleged suspect was traced living in the Netherlands, married to a Dutch woman. Police questioned Henderson and eliminated him as a suspect. Langford also told police that Henderson did not look like the killer. Peter Tobin. Tobin was a convicted sex offender and serial killer active at the time of the killings in the UK who some investigators believed could be Bible John. However, definitive proof linking Tobin to the Glasgow murders has never been established. David Wilson, a criminologist, strongly believes the available evidence supports his theory that Tobin is Bible John. Others have criticized his theory. He has stated that the moment he believed Tobin was Bible John occurred during Tobin's trial for the 1991 murder of 18-year-old Dinah McNichol, in which a witness's trial testimony of what Tobin had said in the company of herself and McNichol on the evening of McNichol's abduction contained notable similarities to things reportedly said by Bible John. Some important points of overlap were both men mentioning they did not drink at Hogmanay, and having a cousin who had once scored a hole-in-one in a game of golf. This information, alongside other circumstantial evidence, led Wilson to state, "I didn't set out to prove Tobin was Bible John, but I would stake my professional reputation on it." Tobin has since been eliminated as a suspect by police. John Irvine McGuinness. In 1996, Strathclyde police exhumed the body of John Irvine McGuinness from a graveyard in Stonehouse, South Lanarkshire. McGuinness, who had served in the Scots Guards, had died by suicide in 1980 at the age of 41, by severing the brachial artery in his upper arm. He was the cousin of one of the original suspects in the Bible John investigation and related to a senior police officer. However, Jean Langford had not picked him out in numerous identity parades, and she continued to insist in 1996 that McGuinness was not Bible John. A DNA sample was taken from McGuinness's body for comparison with semen samples found on the stockings belonging to Helen Patak, and which had been used to strangle her. The results of the testing conducted proved inconclusive, with then Lord Advocate Lord Mackay stating insufficient evidence existed to link McGuinness with the murder of Helen Patak. The Crown officially cleared McGuinness of any involvement in the Bible John murders in July 1996. Strathclyde police and the McGuinness family pathologist confirmed in 2005 that further advancements in DNA testing had now enabled a match between McGuinness's DNA and the killer's to be fully disproven. This investigative work would, however, lead to an entirely different individual, the premier suspect, John Templeton. In 2024, DNA evidence emerged that linked a former printer, John Templeton, directly to Helen Patak's murder. Templeton, who died in 2015 aged 70, shared a DNA profile with the previously mentioned prime suspect in her murder, John McGuinness. He also shared such a remarkable likeness to the photo fit of Bible John that he was even nicknamed Bible John by his colleagues in Glasgow libraries, the job he moved to after his stint as a printer. Templeton was named as the alleged killer of the third victim, Helen Patak, in a book published in June 2024 by author Jill Bavin-Mizzi. The author is also convinced he murdered the two other women linked to Bible John, Patricia Docker and Jemima MacDonald. Templeton's ex-colleagues contacted Jill after reading her book, one who met Templeton in 2001 in Polsall Park Library and later in the Mitchell Library around 2006, said he was a charming, chatty man, always smiling but condescending and superior, and I didn't like that. He appeared to enjoy disparaging me and others. It is understood that he was a regular visitor to the Spiritualist Church on Berkeley Street and spoke with a speech impediment. Helen's sister Jean Langford told police a man who shared a taxi with the two women shortly before her murder called himself Templeton or Semperson. Jean noted his speech impediment whereby he pronounced an R as a W and a T as an S, an impediment confirmed by an ex. The ex-colleague also remembered that Templeton had a gap in his teeth which was similar to a description by Jean. She also stated that Templeton boasted twice he had been interviewed by police twice about Patak's murder. She added, "It never crossed my mind he was Bible John, though I was familiar with the story. When we saw the photograph on the front of the Sunday Mail, we realized it was the John Templeton we had worked with. We were gobsmacked. It was the talk of the building." Bavin-Mizzi traced Templeton after researching the ancestry of John McGuinness, the prime suspect in the killing of Helen Patak. His DNA profile was inconclusive, however he shared a profile with Templeton. To this, Australian author Jill Bavin-Mizzi opined, "I'm 100% convinced John Templeton is Bible John. The circumstantial evidence is so weighty it would be a mathematical impossibility for it not to be Templeton." Open case. The lead investigating officer, Detective Superintendent Joe Beattie, 3 years after the first killing, stated, "It is quite incredible that this man has eluded us. I am positive this man comes from Glasgow or nearby. He is between 25 and 30, between 5 feet 10 in and 6 feet tall, has light red hair, good features, blue-grey eyes, and a smart modern appearance. I do not think he is a very religious man, but just has a normal intelligent working knowledge of the Bible which he likes to air. There must be many people who know someone who looks like this artist's impression. Additional suspects. A former crime editor for a local newspaper, Jane Hamilton, has since stated that detectives she has interviewed who had reviewed the Bible John case files in the 1980s were of the belief that 2 of the murders linked to Bible John were actually domestic incidents. Patricia Docker's estranged husband Alex had been an early suspect in her murder. The two had married in 1963, but their marriage had been an unhappy one, and the issue of divorce had been raised between them more than once. Alex, who claimed to have last seen Docker at her home in October 1967, when the two had met to discuss divorce, was considered by police to have had a possible motive to kill his estranged wife. The pair were actively contemplating divorce at the time of Docker's murder, but no evidence emerged linking Alex with his wife's death. Shortly after Docker's murder, Alex took their son from his grandparents to live with him and his new partner in Lincolnshire. Jemima MacDonald had also recently separated from her husband at the time of her murder and had likewise moved back to Glasgow the year prior to her death. Her former husband was repeatedly questioned by police but without further action. Helen Puttick's husband George was conclusively eliminated as a suspect in his wife's murder in 1996 after his DNA was tested against the semen samples discovered upon his wife's stockings and was found not to match. Castings of his teeth were also found not to match the bite mark the killer had left upon her wrist. Conclusion: the sole witness ever to have engaged in a lengthy conversation with Bible John, Jean Langford, died in September 2010 at the age of 74. Langford had given police the description used to form the second composite drawing created of the suspect, which remains the most significant clue as to the perpetrator's physical appearance. Despite Professor Wilson's assertion that Peter Tobin may have been Bible John, when Langford discussed her sister's murderer many decades later, she dismissed this theory, stating emphatically that Tobin had not been the man she had shared a taxi with on the night of her sister's murder. Considering the sheer weight of circumstantial evidence stacked up against Templeton, his DNA profile, his physical appearance and imperfections, the taxi encounter with Jill and Helen, coupled with the fact that he is the only one not to be formally cleared of her murder, Templeton appears to tick all the investigative boxes to be the real murderer. Templeton died in 2015. If you enjoyed this unsolved case, hit the like button and subscribe for more content as it comes online. Thanks for watching, and see you again in the next one.